Okay, today I would like to talk about the dog in the garage. But before I do, I need to set things up a little bit for you and talk about some background. And I'd like to talk about biology and how biologists do their work. And there's two conditions that they can study various creatures, various animals. One is in isolation, and the other one is in their natural environment. And the language they use here is interesting because if they study the animal in isolation, in vitro, then they can learn some things. So in vitro, think vitreous, think glass. The classic example is a petri dish. That would be to study an organism in vitro. And you can learn some things. But you also need to study the organism in vivo, within the living, within that creature's normal, natural context. Because those can be, you can get very different results in vitro and in vivo. So a good biologist will look at both. So what about humans? Well, our in vivo experience, our natural, historically normal experience, is to live outdoors in wild, natural environments. Classically, the savanna grasslands of East Africa, for example. And we've spent the vast, overwhelming majority of our time on this planet in that condition. That's what's historically normal for us. Anything else is historically abnormal for us. Our bodies are the way they are because of that experience. So now we find ourselves in this radically different alien environment. This is what's called mismatch, the evolutionary discordance hypothesis. All of a sudden, boom, it's almost like a time machine. Now all of a sudden we are in the modern world, and that world has a host of alien qualities that our bodies are totally unfamiliar with. And it's easy to come up with a list. So we live in this alien physical environment, with the built environment, with chairs and tables and countertops and right angles in our buildings. That's all historically abnormal. We live in an alien circadian environment. In other words, we leave the lights on all the time and we're always putting up more lights. And that change doesn't just affect our physiology and our brain function, but it also affects all the other creatures on the planet. We live in an alien nutritional environment. The food that we eat now is so removed from our immediate experience, we don't even know what it is half the time. We live in an alien social environment. In other words, we don't have tribes anymore, closely knit tribes. We have networks of people with lots of strangers. That's abnormal. We live in an alien sensory environment. So most of what we touch during the day now is plastic. Smooth plastic surfaces of our trackpads and our phones, our countertops. We don't get to touch the living world anymore. And if you live in a low touch culture, you might not even touch other people. So that's abnormal. We also live in an alien spiritual environment. So in other words, the narratives, the stories that drive us, that move us, are often given to us synthetically. We are playing out commercial narratives that tell us how to live. That's abnormal, right? And finally, we live in an alien moral environment in which now ends are considered paramount over means. In other words, if you get the result you're after, it doesn't matter how you get there. That's abnormal as well. So here we are trying to make a go of it in this alien environment. And some people do okay with it. Some people are adaptable enough that they can maintain their equanimity and their health in those conditions. But a lot of us are suffering. And we're suffering in part because we don't frame our experience in the right way. Which brings me around to the dog in the garage. And a little thought experiment for you. Just imagine you take your dog, you put that dog in the garage, and you leave him there for weeks and months on end. Maybe you feed the dog Maybe you clean up after the dog, but the dog has no playtime, no exploration, no adventure, no contact with people or other dogs. Just living in solitary confinement. And you wait a few weeks, you wait a few months, and then you go out and check on the dog. What's that dog's condition now? You're going to find a whole host of afflictions. That dog's going to have physical problems. That dog is going to have mental problems and behavioral problems as well. So now the question is there something wrong with the dog? And superficially, you might say, well, sure, there's something wrong with the dog. His hair's falling out. He's, got all these physical. So yeah, there's something wrong with the dog. So we bring in a physician or a veterinarian to work on the dog and solve the dog's immediate problems. Problem solved? No, not at all. And in fact, if you're a biologist and you look at this, you say, there's nothing wrong with that dog at all. This is how mammals respond to living in an alien environment. Obviously, the problem is not the dog himself or herself. The problem is the garage. The problem is the setting, the context that that animal is living in. And this makes perfect sense, right? There's nothing wrong with the dog. And to personalize it, there's nothing wrong with you either. In all likelihood, there's nothing wrong with your brain chemistry. There's nothing wrong with your physiology. There's nothing wrong with your personality or your ability to adapt to the world. You are living in an alien environment. You are living in the garage. And don't be fooled. In all likelihood, you are not diseased. Now, to be sure, some people do have genuine physical afflictions, but you have to take the setting into account. And this is something we need to do going forward. If you're struggling with some kind of mental condition, look to context. Look to the setting that you live in. That's what's important. And it also suggests a form of activism. We need to extend our attention outward. Not here, but there. That's where the solutions will lie. So give yourself some credit. You're probably doing pretty well. Look to the context. Get out of the garage.